Howdy, folks, and welcome to episode 535 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Paul E. Cooley. Joining me, as always, my wonderful brother from another mother, Mr. Terry Mixon.
Aw, that's so sweet.
Yeah, I know. The check better be in the mail, buddy.
How you doing, man?
Have
you killed anybody recently?
No, I haven't killed a character in quite a long time. Oh. Well, I am having some yard work done in the back. I'll leave it at that.
There's a meme running around that says that if you want to go ahead and, hide a body, you bury it like 5 to 10 feet underneath a dead animal so it will fool the cadaver dogs.
Yep.
But the article that had a picture of a duck on it. And you're like, okay, and why am I taking murder advice from a duck?
It's the half-flat duck. Oh my God! It's all a payout scheme. It's taking the Affleck insurance policies out of all these people and they're whacking them. I love it. It.
And when he gives the coup de grace, it's Affleck.
Exactly. While holding a chainsaw. Where the hell do you get these ideas?
I can totally see, the spray of red coming up all over the duck, and him going, rock, 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 rock.
This is why we are not in marketing.
I think that would be great.
I do too. I think it'd be funny as hell. I also think that the advertiser or everybody would freak the fuck out. Especially the people who own the Affleck duck. Although I think I would pay money to see them make Peking duck out of that sucker. That would be, Yeah.
I personally wonder why they hired Gilbert Gottfried to do the duck's voice in the first place.
Because So what's going on, man?
Lots of writing. Almost done with the stuff I need to finish writing for Glenn. I'll be done with that hopefully Monday or Tuesday. My goal is to, by the time we record the next episode, it will be off to him and I'll be back to writing on not Tree of Liberty, Blood of Patriots.
Okay. So busy.
The audio version of Tree of Liberty is still awaiting. It's headed to retail. It's been that way for a week and a half. It'll be there soon. She's busy. Veronica's busy working on Race to Terra. I've got a story in the number 6 anthology for Chris Kennedy's Four Horsemen universe that's out now. Things are just happening. Busy things are going on. Busy writer is busy.
Cool. It's better than busy writer is not busy.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah, I can't talk today.
That would be lazy writer is lazy.
Yeah, lazy writer is lazy. I have been a lazy writer.
Uh-oh.
I've been a very lazy writer. So, only a couple thousand words, been scratching it here and there. I'm still working crazy hours and trying to get shit done for these 2 startups I'm working for. So,
you're like your own little tech bubble.
Yeah, I know. Shit, I'm going to burst. Hopefully in the dollar signs. That's
it reminds me of something I just read I just heard in a lit RPG book that I was listening to. The main hero defeated a group of bad guys and their associated mercenaries. And after he accepted the surrender of the mercenaries, he's like, how much will it cost to hire you for 10 minutes work? And then he uses them to fuck over their original employers.
Yes, of course. Pretty sure that also happened in the Blacklist. Something very similar.
Well, I could totally see that. I did not see the last season of The Blacklist because the story went off in a direction that I didn't particularly care for.
Yeah,
but before that, it was an amazing television show.
First 4 seasons, man. First 4 seasons.
I love the character. Oh my God. The way he would just, tell these offhand stories that had nothing to do with what your you're doing at the moment, and then he made them relevant as he like shot you in the forehead.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. And that's what makes that character stand alive. And that character is just so interesting because of that. We rarely get actual insight. We see more of him through what he does and what he says than what's going on in his head. But then when you do find out what's going on in his head, it's because he's had a moment where you can see it, where he lets his guard down. So, yeah.
It would be so challenging to write a character like that.
Yeah, I haven't found the story yet for that, I don't think. A story for a character like that. But I'm with you. I want to write a character like that. Because it just would be so much fun to ramp up that kind of tension. But you know, how dare I? So when I'm not coding my butt off, I'm trying to get in the writing chair and get out. When I sit down, I usually get around 700 to 900 words before my brain is just completely blown. But been fighting a lot of code. So if I can just tackle this one goddamn problem, I will be a very happy man, because 90% of the goddamn project will be done. So it's one last piece. I just need it. So that's what I'm fighting with right now.
I've been pretty consistent. I've been trying to write a chapter a day. It's ended up being between 1,500 and 2,000 words, which is a little short of a chapter a day. But I can't complain. I'm getting a lot of words done.
Yeah, as long as you keep going through that. I think the chapters, I've been trying to get through a chapter, and sometimes I just can't do it. So sometimes I just have to go to sleep. But
sleep, it's for the weak.
Yeah, the words are getting done just very freaking slowly, and it's maddening. So that's where things are. But this should only last for another month and a half. And then we should hit some kind of schedule. So just got to survive a month and a half of this bullshit, and then we'll see where we are then. So that's the plan. Anyway.
I hope it levels out and you can get the time to dig back into your story, because there are people that need to die.
Mm-hmm. People need to die. Unfortunately, bills need to get paid first. It's always an issue. Anyway, so that's what's going on with me. Now, Terry, I want to have a serious discussion with you about something that I think we're probably going to fight about.
I can't think of any place in writing that there's any daylight between us.
Well, here we go, because you know what, Terry? Your adverbs. Terry.
Sir?
Lovingly.
Oh, I didn't know you cared.
Hastily.
If you're going to be loving, I prefer you not be hastily.
This is so ridiculous. Speaking of, impossibly ridiculous. Or
I'd buy that one.
Or ridiculously impossible.
No, it's definitely impossibly ridiculous.
Impossibly ridiculous. So, you know, we're supposed to start on something else. How did I get an adverb abuse?
Hey, we could start with adverbs.
All right, fine. We'll start with adverb abuse. I haven't seen it lately, but there are several podcast novels out there, as well as indie stuff out there, as well as what I've seen published by the bigs, where there are sections of the writing where there is a goddamned adverb in every sentence, or at least every 2 sentences in a paragraph.
Paul said accusingly.
Terry said dumbassingly. So, what do you think about this?
I think that, like everything else, it can be overdone. But I think way too many writers, when they're starting out, get carried away with trying to scrub adverbs out of their writing. It's part of what is your own voice. It shouldn't be completely eradicated, just like it should not be completely overused.
I do my best to not use them unless there's a case for it. And that's not conscious thought. That's just the way I've been trained and trained myself to write.
You've been poisoned by the white tower of academia.
Oh my God. No, because when you read it aloud, it's fucking annoying.
Wait a minute. You can't use that word. It can't be fucking annoying. It's got to be something else.
I don't even know if I'm going to have the strength to edit that entire sequence. Paul said admonishingly.
Repressively. Paul said repressively. One of the things that we forget is that the written word is different than the spoken word. Part of what makes us as interesting individuals is the way we talk, the way we think. And adverbs are part of that. It's never, you're never going to escape it. Everyone uses them. They are a part of the language for a reason.
Sure.
The people that say they must be ruthlessly scrubbed out really don't understand that this is not a nonfiction book we're writing. We're writing about people. We're writing about people. People have voices. Adverbs play a role in that.
Dialogue is different.
No, internal monologue is the same. If you are buried inside a person, you have to say everything, see everything, experience everything as if that person were doing the experiencing. And that means that adverbs are a part of it.
Okay, so here's where I think I started on this instead of dialogue tags, because I started out saying he said lovingly. Okay, this is what I'm getting at. We're not necessarily talking about inner voice. We're not necessarily talking about inner monologue. Yes, those things are going to be there. I am talking about mixing them in with no freaking reason to in all these dialogue tags.
If you overuse it, then yes, you're using it for not a reason. But there is occasionally the reason to use them, and perhaps even more than occasionally. In the course of a scene, I will use those attached dialogue tags 2-3 times, maybe. I'll use it to express how tired someone is. He said tiredly. I could change it up to do something else, but it's a shortcut, and it works. As long as you don't overuse it to the point that it stands out to the people that are reading it, they're not going to complain. Because they won't see it.
So you're saying it just folds into the background?
It does. Just like the word said folds into the background of dialogue. You can use the word said until the cows come home, and people will not notice it as long as you don't say every other paragraph. You know, if you don't say every sentence, he said this, he said that, he said the other. Just like adverbs, if you don't use a billion of them, they will not stand out. They will fade into the background.
And I agree with that. I never said you had to get rid of them all. I
was
talking about, no, I did not.
You are one of those people that wants to scrub them out. Red lines. Okay, I don't have any idea.
This is why we can't have nice conversations. Terry looked at me abashedly like a little kid. What I don't like about them is that they are a shortcut. And when I see people talking, I guess I'm more interested in seeing what they look like, their expressions, reading into that, because I think if you repeat it subtly often enough, you don't have to worry about it. And when you do use an adverb, people know exactly what that expression looks like in that character.
To a point, it's better to have the person perform an action or have an expression or do something that says what their mood is. But one of the reasons that we have adverbs in conversation where we're not physically present, where we're writing about something, is because you can't do inflection in the written word. You've got to have something there that says there's an inflection to what I just said. That you can't see my expression, but here it is.
But the whole point of fiction is to describe that expression.
I disagree.
You disagree? Okay, so here we go. A minimalist, which I've been called more than once, but I'm kind of evolving here, will have you pick up all those nuances just by dialogue. Just by dialogue. and the way people talk, the way they move will hardly give any real credence to the expressions. They'll let you figure that out just by the way the characters speak. And if you're good at doing that, which I'm not, but if you're good at doing that, it will work just fine.
That is a very advanced technique.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yes, it can be done. Yes, the masters can make that happen. Occasionally, I can make something like that happen. Most people cannot.
Okay, fine. So, because either readers don't pay close enough attention or I've done a shitty job in the past of it, I've had to kind of evolve my style a little bit to include more of those details than I would have liked before. And part of that is because I started reading a lot of what was when I started writing the Black, I started reading a whole bunch of stuff that was in that genre, including looking at what Jake Bible does to get an idea of what commercial fiction would look like as opposed to my existing style. And so I kind of modified things a little bit to make that book a little bit more accessible and digestible, if you will.
Excuse me, but your literature is showing.
Yeah, excuse me, my literature is showing. Yeah, right. Fuck off. Anyway, so it's just a change of how you write, but it's to address something. I guess my point is that just because something is hard doesn't mean you shouldn't try to do it.
Just like everything, especially the things that are not easy, you have to get there in stages. Should you try to get all the way to where you never use an adverb? I don't know that I can agree with that.
No,
should you try to drop it down to a level where it's not intrusive? Of course, I agree with that. My definition of what's intrusive is not the same as yours, apparently.
No, it is not.
And that's not meant to. That's not meant to be a criticism. Everybody's taste is different.
Yeah.
But I think that if you look at readership on a whole, they aren't as concerned about whether you have an adverb as another writer or an editor.
And see, this is why it's so funny, because I think that it's always possible that all of us at one time or another are worrying about shit that nobody notices, but we notice it
every single day, buddy.
But not just about our work. When we read something, we see something and it strikes us as odd, and it's because we are more attuned to that than normal everyday person who's reading a book.
Somebody, in fact, I'll just go ahead and say who it was. I always read Dean Wesley Smith's blog. I am, of course, one of his acolytes. So I put on the cowl and I go ahead and swing the censer. And but I do listen to his blog all the time. And one of the things he was talking about a month ago was that if you don't like something about something you've read, it's a matter of taste. Even if it's to the point that you don't think the other person has enough skill to write, if it's the writing, the physical act of writing is not very pleasant to read, it's still a matter of taste.
Sure.
And it took me a while of grappling with that to accept it, because at first I wanted to argue mentally with myself on that and saying, no, if something's really terribly written, that's not taste. It's a piece of crap. And after arguing with myself for a while, I said, no, he's probably right. He probably is.
He is right.
Because it's a level of storytelling that is below what I find comfortable to read, but it still really is a matter of taste, even when it's just the matter of their grammar and their structure is poor.
A lot of the pulp stuff was awful. It was god awful, but it sold.
Oh, that goes ahead and brings back, some old Doc Smith stuff that I read years and years ago, because all the time he would have somebody, blah, 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 he ejaculated.
Yeah.
That's always exciting to come across in a sentence.
Yeah. There's Stephen King, I think, uses it at least once a book. and I can't, I really, to be honest, he used to be an English teacher. So I sometimes wonder if he does that just to trigger the literature folks, just to trigger us. I
could be.
sometimes wonder.
I was going somewhere with the whole point of it all being a matter of taste, and it is using the adverbs, using the dialogue tags. That's still just a matter of taste. And if you look at the bell curve of normal readership, you're going to find that most people don't care about it. We're obsessing over things that we do. We're obsessing about things that other people do because we are quote unquote professionals at writing. So we think we know something.
Oh.
And then when we read something, we are going to be critical of it because our nose is going to be up in the air and we're going to go ahead and go, oh, look at that, what they did. Oh my God, look at that Garand. Oh my God. No, it's all a matter of taste, and writers have no taste.
I don't do that. I don't sit there and read and say, oh, look at this piece of shit. I'm so much better than this. I would never deign to write such dribble.
Have you listened to yourself?
Fuck you.
Have you listened to yourself in this episode?
Yes. I know what I don't sit there and say. I'm simply saying that when it happens, it annoys the fucking shit out of me. And therefore, I wanted to get your take on whether or not it annoyed the fucking shit out of you.
I think we've gotten that.
Well,
it doesn't annoy me to the point that it does to you. Just like some other people out there will go, they did what? What does it even mean?
What does it even mean, man? Don't force your academics on me, man.
Well, don't worry. I'm sure that they don't actually diagram sentences anymore. So in another 20 years, they're not even you're going to have to write your book like you're texting it.
I think that's already happening.
Oh my gosh.
One thing that's really funny is I just never got the diagramming sentence thing. For some reason, my brain just didn't compute. It did not compute. I could write a perfectly clear sentence. I could tell you if a sentence was grammatically flawed, but I could not diagram a damn sentence. I just did not get it. And I nearly got a D in 7th grade English, 6th grade English. I can't remember because I couldn't diagram sentences. It just didn't snap. Same thing with math. Now
math is hard.
Now if you asked me to do it, I'd have no problem. But back then, my brain just did not put all that shit together to make any sense of it. So,
college algebra. I failed college algebra 3 times.
Ow.
3 times. Because I just could not get it. And finally, actually, I think I failed it twice and then passed it on the 3rd time. But finally, I found somebody that could explain to me what I wasn't understanding in a way that I could understand it.
Right.
And after that, I was able to at least get a passing grade. But before then, I was like, okay, if we're going to go ahead and do these factoring, it could be any number on this. What do you mean it can be any number? It's math. It can't just be any number. It has to have a fucking answer.
No, it doesn't.
Apparently not.
Life doesn't have an answer.
Personally, I am glad that I am done. I passed college algebra, and that is the last I saw of math.
I didn't do well in math until I took a Boolean logic course in college. And somehow, for some reason, that course in particular made all this stuff snap for me. It was taught by a wonderful woman who was, can I say this? She was a biker chick.
I think you could say that.
That's what we would have called her in the 90s. It was really 90s biker chick, and in the 80s too. So her husband and she both had these big Harleys, and half the time she'd ride on the back. Occasionally he rode on the back. It was pretty funny. But she was a wonderful teacher, just wonderful as far as boiling everything down to the simplest terms. And then we just built up from there. And I always look forward to that class. The homework was a blast. I just loved getting into it. And that's what made me able to put all this bullshit from math and science together.
When I was taking the college algebra class, the stars aligned one day and I got 100 on one of the tests. And I took it up to the front and I said, "You've made some kind of mistake. This is not possible." She said, "Nope, you just managed to somehow work your way through it and you got them all right."
You stumbled your way through
You stumbled your way through to actually understanding all the concepts in this test. Congratulations.
Congratulations. You may now visit the playground. Just try not to eat the glue this time.
If I was a Marine, I could eat the crayons.
Oh, here we go. I saw a bunch of smack talk going on, posted by you, JR, and somebody
I
else.
would never.
Yeah. You guys in the military. Such children.
Those that serve have earned the right to poke fun at those who have served. It's the way that it works.
I know it's the way that it works, and I completely understand it.
We've paid our dues. We can do it.
I'm just saying the natives seem a little restless.
I got to confess, I got a big grin out of triggering Chris Winder with something Marine related. I don't even remember what it was anymore, but it got a response out of him. I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Everybody trying to trigger each other.
Adverbs. Did we beat those up? Are we ready to move on to dialogue tags?
I think we're ready to move on to dialogue tags. Dare we? What are you talking about? We had an intelligent conversation. You just went out of whack a couple times, got all indignant.
I like how you blame it on me.
I'm not blaming. It's just simply happened.
That was certainly an accusatory tone.
It was not. I did not say anything accusingly.
I said accusatory, not accusingly.
I said accusingly.
That's because you are just wedded to these adverbs.
Dialogue tags, you jackass.
He said angrily.
He said angrily. So I have 5 people in a conversation, Terry. Let's just put this out here. Let's say I have 5 characters in a conversation.
Been there, done that.
Been there, done that. So have I. It fucking sucks.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Oh.
Because the urge to use the shortcuts of he said, she said, can sometimes lead to people getting confused what the fuck is going on. Because then you have to throw in names. So if I have a character named April, I'm throwing her name in there like 4 or 5 times.
There's a solution to that.
What is the solution, Terry?
The solution is you have people do things in the middle of the conversation. Bob leaned up against the bar, then dialogue. You don't have to use said.
Right.
You've mentioned who it was. It's attached to the same paragraph. It's clear who's doing the talking.
Yes.
All you have to do is do something that makes clear who it is that's talking. And you can jump back and forth in a conversation if it's only 2 people in that conversation talking back and forth for probably 3 back and forths. One person said something, one person said something, the other person said something, then you got to put in a dialogue tag.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't have too much back and forth without an identifier, you're okay. You don't have to go berserk with the word said, and for God's sake, stick with said. Do not use other words for said, because said is invisible, other words are not. And
what other words would go in place of
oh my gosh. Retorted. I just pulled one out of the air. I just pulled that one out of the air. So any other word that you choose to use in place of said is ubiquitous. It sits everywhere. No one sees it. You use retorted. Oh my God. Everybody's going to notice that word.
Terry is a sadist. I just realized this. I didn't know before I was going to be on the show with a sadist.
I'm not sure that's a bad thing. Yes, I'm a sadist.
I'm a confirmed sadist. If that wouldn't trigger half the pot, a shit ton of people, I'd put that on a shirt. Confirmed sadist. It would cause so much trouble. Anyway, yes, completely agreed. The problem is that I can get bored in those situations. And if I'm bored in those situations where I have that many people talking, then I worry about the reader being bored. If you watch a movie, you'll often have a time where maybe characters are in a briefing or something, or they're having a meeting, and it breaks off into other little sub conversations while the main one's going on, because then you can have a main character say something to another main character about what is going on. Maybe the person speaking calls them out on it, stuff like that, to make it a little bit more interesting and give you breaks.
If you want to see how to do a meeting, you should read A Scene from David Weber, because the man has
you were going to say
meetings
that.
everywhere, and they don't stand out as having any trouble with realizing who's doing what or having them internally being boring, other than the fact it's yet another meeting.
Yet another meeting. Why ATM, huh? The Yatum, the David Weber Yatum.
Yet another meeting that could have been handled by email. Yeah, pretty much.
It's everybody's life. Now, what's a way to get out of that?
What am I getting out of again? Be more specific.
Getting out of the meetings.
Sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes when you've got 3 or more people together, it's for a reason, because you've got to bring some separated plot threads together. So occasionally you can't avoid having to have that mixer to bring everything back together and to come up with a plan of action. The thing that you'd like to try to do in its place is to have those types of things happen while action is also occurring, rather than them sitting in a briefing room.
What do you think about the idea of having one character remember the meeting in a flashback and then talk to the other characters about it?
I think you should have realized the answer when you said the word flashback.
I knew you were going to.
That's what I think about it. It's a really bad idea.
I knew you were going to say that, because you're such a chump. You're such a chump.
I can live with it.
You can live with it. I think there are ways to break it up. I've tried doing a couple different things with it, because I really got sick of doing it in Derelict. I just did not want to freaking write another goddamn scene with another goddamn meeting.
How many meetings do you think you had?
I don't think it really had that many. That's the sad part.
Most of my scenes that I have are in the course of action taking place. Things are going on. The actual sit-down meetings are few and far between.
Right.
And that's my preference.
I think part of what I'm bitching about is really because Evolution, I had to do a lot of that. I mean, there's probably at least 7,000 or 8,000 words, if not 10 or 12 of meetings. But there was no other way I could find to do it.
Well, just make sure that, during one of these long meetings, they keep looking over at one of the characters and they're making origami. And every meeting, there's more and more paper in front of them.
No, I think I've got a scene where there's just like soda cans everywhere and shit on the table. But regardless, there are ways to handle that. You can use a flashback. You just have to be careful how you do it. Terry, again, has his own particular taste. I don't mind that. I don't mind that as a reader. I don't mind it as a writer, because it actually breaks up the story a little bit. I find if you go too linear, there's no real texture to the story. It becomes a string. And I like to basically put some of that stuff in there, because you're always going to have characters reflecting on the past. One of the interesting things you can do in this particular situation, though, is you can have members of that were at the briefing come away with different interpretations of what was said at the briefing, which I think makes for some interesting, possible interesting friction or Keystone Cops like stuff later on.
Sounds like every meeting I ever had when I was at NASA.
But that was more heavily on the Keystone Cop side?
No, you had to get something in writing in the email after the meeting, because somebody else would claim, we never said that. We never agreed to that.
Yep.
Yes, you did. You absolutely did agree to it.
What I always used to do after a meeting was I write up what I heard, and I would put the minutes in front of whoever was holding the meeting and saying, this is my understanding, and copy everybody in the meeting. This is what it is. Because if this is not what it is, you better tell me now.
Yeah, but then some of them will even wait till later and still claim it's not what they said.
That's when I pull out the email chain and tell them to go fuck themselves.
And they tell you to do it. They tell you to go back and do it yourself, because that's how people are.
And that's when I say tough shit. My team is not spending more time on your stupid shit. They have lives. They need to go live them. We are not here to.
It's only 4 more weekends. They can come in.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Can you tell we've worked in IT? I believe you can.
Too many 110, 120 hour weeks in my late 20s and 30s. I'm jaded, cynical, and really pissed off. Just to have the rug pulled out from you every fucking time, right?
You need to go ahead and write a book where you've got some IT guy is the serial killer.
Yeah, I've thought about writing that book. I've thought about it.
Even if it didn't sell, it would certainly, work out some of those issues you've got.
The remaining anger I have. That's okay. I'll have probably more of it because at some point, if this project is successful, I'll be integrating with somebody's system. So I'm sure at that point it will turn into a rage fest.
Who wrote this anyway? A code monkey?
Here's the API. What part of this do you not understand? This is what I'm doing. You integrate it. Hey, I just provide the mechanism for you to call it. That's all I got to do. The rest of it's your problem. Unless you want to, pony up the bucks.
Woohoo!
Yeah, money good. Anyway, meetings, briefings, all of that bullshit where you have a lot of characters can be a real problem. Repeating names over and over again can seem like a real problem. If you have one doctor in your group, can you safely refer to them as the doctor said, Terry?
Yes, you can.
If there's only one engineer,
you absolutely can. If there is a unique identifier, you can use it. If somebody is the only person with red hair, you could say the redhead said, and it's fine.
Or if there's only one woman in there,
she said.
Or only one guy.
Exactly so. As long as whatever word you choose as a descriptor is unique and unambiguous, you can use it.
I find that that's a good way to break things up. I've also been called on it a couple times because it wasn't specific enough or people weren't reading carefully enough. Because I thought I did my job. Maybe I didn't, but I think they just didn't know how to read.
You just go ahead and need to have somebody come in so you've got from another universe, so you've got two characters that are the same person.
Yeah.
That makes conversations hard.
What in the fuck were you thinking when you did that? Seriously.
I was sitting there going, ooh, it would be cool if I did this.
And then you got into it and went, oh, God, no.
Actually, I still thought it was all right.
See, there's no accounting for taste. Anyway.
That's okay. At least one of the reviewers didn't like it so much. And you know what? I don't care.
So these are little gimmicks and tricks that, you can use and you should use as much as possible when it calls for it, especially when it can save you some headache and verbosity later.
One of the reasons to use something like that is to stop the repetitiveness of it.
Yeah.
Like I said, the word said is, even though it may be a billion times that you have it in this novel, is never going to stick out. But if in the course of a conversation you use the name over and over and over and over again, it's going to stand out.
It's also not very realistic because we don't call one another by our first names all the time or last names or anything else.
We rarely do that.
Okay, so Paul glances at Terry and says, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to know who he's saying it to because we just told you. We don't need to embellish who's going to say it because we already told you that too. That's all you need.
If you're in a private conversation, people will not use a name. If you're in a group setting, like I pick it up from the Army a lot of the times, with a bunch of people standing around, somebody will talk to you, but they're actually talking to the audience around you and say, blah, 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 Cooley.
Yeah.
So they'll use your name, but it's not really to identify you.
It's just
part of the conversation.
Just calling you out or whatever else.
Exactly.
Because why? A drill instructor doesn't need a reason.
That's totally true. They don't. They rarely need reasons. They rarely have reasons.
That's kind of the point. There is no order in the universe. Except what I say.
There is no order. There is only Zool.
There is only Zool. Yeah. Right. So I was just thinking about all this because in the last two books, this one and this one too, that I'm working on right now, it keeps, those kind of things keep popping up. And so I have to make decisions as to how I'm going to do that. And I usually follow my nose as much as possible. I try and give them something to do, like you were saying. I try and give them something to do where they're eating while they're talking, or Catfish is crumpling a can to show he's bored or to show disgust. There's all these different cues you can give without necessarily having to get into their heads, which is especially helpful when you have a ton of characters. So there's little tricks like that you can use to kind of break things up.
Yep. Totally agreed.
Now, what else should we bitch about?
Well, let's see. We've talked about two things that are done down in the weeds of the scenes. So what other things do people do in the scenes? Often they go ahead and try to describe things in the scene to the exclusion of everything else that's going on. They'll go down the rabbit hole of describing the conference room in the middle of the meeting and derail the train of action that's actually taking place. How do we go ahead and how do we make it clear what the environment is without making it so obtrusive that it stops the conversation for 14 paragraphs?
I handle that by first of all figuring out in my brain if there is anything about this conference room that makes it particularly unique. And it serves as an excuse to have the character come through the door and see what's going on. And I like to have them arrive first or at the end, one of the two, because you can do some really funny things if they come in first. But regardless, it gives you a chance to get a sense of where these people are going to play. And after that, I don't really think you have to do much else.
When we come into a scene, I try to early on in that scene introduce at least a few key elements to give the general shape of what the environment looks like. And then I proceed to ignore it for the rest of the scene. Right. Unless there's something that comes up that I have to go ahead and then describe, I'll set the scene in someone's mind. I always think I use too few words to do so, but people don't complain. Right. So maybe I'm just being overly critical there, but I've accepted that just a little bit of description goes a long way.
I agree. Unless there is something really particular about the room, which maybe there's a detail that you need to make sure you get out to the reader because it's going to be important later on, then maybe you need to spend a little more time on it. And I've talked about that I do that. If I spend time on something, chances are I'm going to use it later because I want you to remember that we talked about it. And so I will have somebody notice it.
Here's another trick that I learned from doing mysteries that's not really related to that. If you want to put something out for the reader, but have them not actually realize you're putting it out for them, make a list. If there's more than 3 of something, they're going to skip over it in their mind. If you bury something in a list of 5 things, they won't remember it, but if they go back, it's there.
Right. It just all depends on how subtle it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
It really does depend on that because you face that very issue. If somebody has to go back and see if that actually happened or if you skipped something, either you did a really bad job of showing it off, they didn't read carefully, or they're just one of those assholes who want to go back and fact check everything in your book.
Well, I'll use this as an example. If you're going to plant a clue that leads to the killer, you don't want to give it too much emphasis.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
You want to go ahead. And I specifically said this was a mystery thing.
I missed that.
I must have buried that in a list. Yeah. No,
because
that's a mystery thing. So you put it out there, but it's still hidden.
Right. Yeah. Mystery, suspense. Well, suspense is the art of telling the audience what's going to happen or giving them information the character doesn't have.
Suspense is a ticking time bomb.
Yes.
Whereas mystery is I wonder what happened here.
Yeah, exactly. But you can mix the two things together and also come up with suspense where you have a mystery, but it's a mystery for the character. It's not a mystery for the reader.
Yes.
So the reader has access to information the character does not, and then they get to find out how the character is going to solve the case. That's Columbo. That's all these other shows that do it that way, which is fine. It's a formula that works. It's well tried. Well, it's true. It works. It just does for those kinds of stories. And that is not a bad thing. Again, something to rip off.
Mm-hmm. And something you were talking about there, Columbo, reminded me of another thing that we can talk about, and that's character tags. Do you know what a character tag is?
A character tag.
Something new. I know you know what it is. You just probably never heard the phrase.
Probably never heard the term. Yeah.
Columbo comes to mind because he's got that thing where he goes, "Oh, I just got this one other
thing.
question."
Yeah.
That's a character tag. It's a behavior or something about the character that you put in that immediately is identifiable as that character. Correct. Princess Kelsey, she's always hungry. There's always something food related going on somewhere around her. So when I say that she's starving, it's a character tag.
Right.
So things like that are fun to have buried in there about your characters, because the repetition of those helps cement the character firmly in the reader's mind.
With Hollingsworth in the Black series, it's his love of Looney Tunes.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll occasionally and he's essentially a mimic. So he does really, really great impressions, only he's stuck on Looney Tunes. So when there's a rough situation or stressful thing or something like that, or he's just trying to be sarcastic and break the mood, he'll pull out a quote.
Character tag.
Character tag. You'll know exactly who it is. I don't even have to say anything. It's like something's going on, and then there's a voice, Foghorn Leghorn said or whatever, and everybody knows who it was that said that. I don't even have to say who said it.
It's another way of burying something inside the conversation where it replaces a dialogue tag in some places because you already know who said it.
Yeah. If there's a guy in there with a scar, he scratched his scar. It tells you exactly what that's going to be, and that's
clothing like Columbo's trench coat.
Yeah, Columbo's
very much a character tag.
Emmy and Garrison Furno always swept her hair to one side to cover the worst of the scarring on her face. It's another dialogue tag, and she's always playing with the ends of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's little stuff like that you can just it gives texture. It gives texture to the story. It gives more texture to the character. And it also makes you realize they have a personality. Mm-hmm. I mean, every one of us we have things we do when we enter a room. We have things we do when we meet a stranger. We have thoughts that happen at every level like that. And I think that finding those moments to insert those kinds of pieces brings the character to life. Those kinds of details, if you can add that to it, it really brings the character and the story to life.
While it should be a relatively basic thing that writers should know about, all too often character tags end up being an advanced topic because they just don't even realize they should be doing it. They don't realize that's a thing. They'll go ahead and they'll write out their character on a piece of paper. These are all the things I need to know about this character. But none of that comes through to the reader unless you have those little tags that identify them, saying, this is unique to this character.
Yeah, personality quirks.
Mm-hmm. Quirks, things like that. Physical attributes, things that they do, things that are specific just for them, specific ways that they talk, things that they say. It's just one of those things that we rarely think of as authors that we probably should spend more time on. I've written 10 books in the Empire series, and at this point, the main characters all have their quirks, all have their tags. They've developed fully in my mind.
Once you spend enough time with the character, yeah. It really does come to life. I was going to say in Derelict, I have only one character with an accent, really, and it's a drawl. It's my patented stupid drawl I do in all my books for at least one character for some reason. They always sound like that to me. Anyway, that character is the only one. So if I put drawled behind it or something along those lines, it's another thing that gives you an idea what the character is like. And also, he's constantly like leaning against a wall or something else like that. Very, very relaxed, very casual as much as possible, even in crazy situations. It just gives you an idea what he's like. That he's not wired real tight, which is a good thing considering the situations he's been in. We do these horrible things to our characters.
It's a hobby.
It's a hobby. It's more of a mission in life. It's more of an obsession
It's a gift.
and a horrible one at that. Now, that said, what about ship tags?
What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by character tags?
You mean things to describe a ship. It's not a sentient being.
Correct. But
So I'm not so sure that I've ever used anything like that.
okay, so an inanimate object can have a personality. We attribute that to everything. We anthropomorphize everything that malfunctions. We anthropomorphize our pets. We anthropomorphize anything. People name their cars. People name their computers.
It's true.
They have personalities.
I understand what you're saying, but things like spaceships, while you can do the Millennium Falcon and make something a flying piece of junk, which that ship certainly had its personality.
Yeah.
Most times, I don't. The only time that I've done so, I think, was the short story I wrote called Unexpected Bounty, which had a Minotaur-like bounty hunter stuffed into a human ship. So his head is always bouncing off of things because his horns stick out and the quarters are not made for something his size. So by making the ship small, feel small, I'm giving it those ship tags and making it an individual thing. But for the most part, I don't do it.
That's interesting. I think if you go back and you look, you do it more often than you think you do.
Maybe you're right. I certainly don't recall having done it.
I think that if you're dealing with sci-fi with ships, I would always love to. There's always somebody on the ship who thinks of it as their baby. It's usually the engineer, maintenance man, or captain, whatever, who always thinks of that as their home and everything else. They know every blemish the old girl has. You know, I'm sure if you were in the Navy, you've heard that term. If you've ever watched a TV show with any of the ships, you know what we're talking about. They've always got those marks and blemishes and everything else, and that becomes part of what that thing is. It just does. You talked about the Millennium Falcon. What about Firefly? Regardless of whether you like the series,
I agree. The ship did have an individuality about it.
And it was basically like, this has got to be one of the only ones still flying. So it was recognizable to everybody, not just the crew, not just people who are ship aficionados. It's just they're all gone. And that makes it unique.
One of the things that I did in Unexpected Bounty with that ship that I didn't think anything of it at the time that I wrote it. It just seemed like something natural to do with it. Is when the bounty hunter left the ship, he was talking trash with a bunch of customs guards, and he fishes the key to the spaceship out of his pocket and holds it up and presses the button, and it goes bloop bloop as he's walking off.
God.
And go figure, you got to have something like that so you know you've turned on the alarm system. And I put that on in the story, not even thinking about it. And J.R. Hanley says he got to that part and he about fell out of the chair laughing. Like, I didn't even intend that to be funny. I just thought it was okay. You know?
See, this goes back to the Cold Pursuit thing we were talking about in the pre-show. It's the same kind of thing.
The idea of having an alarm system on your spaceship, which that was important because when I got to the end of the story, I used that alarm system as a major plot point.
That was in Spaceballs.
Was it?
Yes.
It's only been about 1 billion years since I've seen Spaceballs. I probably remembered it from it because as writers, we pick up things from everything that we read, everything we consume. And there's no telling when you're going to dredge up some little bit like a car alarm on your spaceship to come back and haunt somebody.
There may be one of those even in Robin Hood Men in Tights. I think there is.
There is. I think
where where the prince drives up or something like that in his wagon, you know, the horse-drawn carriage. Gets out and I think he turns around and pops the keychain and it beeps. I think that happens.
When I get to the end of the story for Unexpected Bounty, I have the characters, they're trying to get back into their ship. And so I have him hit the alarm on it. So it sets off this siren at about 15,000 decibels inside the launch pit. So I get to use that as a plot point.
Hey, cover your ears. Here comes the sonic assault. Ugh, I hate you. All right. I think we probably should, wrap this up now.
I think that's a good idea. I think we've pretty much chewed it up pretty well.
We chewed the fat, which makes sense considering what we look like. Well, if you have a question or comment or something witty to say, considering it, we're talking about your competition being Terry, it shouldn't be very difficult. You can send an email to show@DevRobotSociety. You can tweet me at Paul_E_Cooley, or you can find us on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dev Robot Society, where all the crazy happens. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DRS podcast and see our ugly mugs. We have to thank our wonderful host, Pod Hoster, who makes all 5 bazillion episodes of the Dev Robot Society available for your ear holes. And you can find us at patreon.com/DRS podcast. If you want to support us, make sure we get this thing out every week and get wonderful exclusive access to benefits such as live shows,
which we need to have another one.
Which we need to have another one like this weekend.
I'm available, but I think you better, get the word out fast.
You think? So anyway, if you're at the $10 level, you get your name read every week. So let's see who these people are. Usual suspects. J.D. Barker, Veronica Red Dress Jaguar, Jack F. Erickson, Kelsey 7 Slick Slimy Snake slowly sliding southward. Try again, Kelson. Isabel Cushy, Rick Shaw, Lisa Slack, Nathan Cosby, Cheryl Winters, Tracy Bodine, John Kilgallen, Devin Lee, Drew, can you fist fight a novel Bernardi? Yes, and win. Chris Winder, Andre Conde Moraes, DJ Chamberlain, and J.R. Handley.
Thanks for your support, folks.
Yes, thank you very much. With that, we're going to get out of here. Terry, it's been fun.
It has.
All right, folks, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.